All right, let's dive in. Have you ever looked at your cloud environment and just felt like it's, well, a bit of a mess? You've got all these siloed tools, hidden risks, and it feels like you're losing control. If that sounds familiar, you're going to want to see this. We're going to break down Cross-Identity's four-pillar framework. It's a really smart, structured way to turn all that chaos into actual, measurable control.
This quote right here, it really hits the nail on the head. Cloud environments don't just crash and burn because of one little mistake. The real failure, the one that creeps up on you, happens when all the critical pieces, seeing what you have, controlling it, understanding the risk, and managing the cost, are all handled in their own separate worlds. You get these gaps between the teams and their tools, and that's exactly where things go wrong.
So what's the fix? Well, you need a unified approach, and that's what this four-pillar framework is all about. Each pillar actually supports the next. You start with visibility, then you layer on governance, make it smart with risk intelligence, and then you tie it all back to the bottom line with cost optimization. They all work together in this continuous loop of control. So let's break each one down.
Okay, first up, Pillar 1, Unified Cloud Visibility. You can't control what you can't see, right? So everything, and I mean everything, has to start here with a crystal clear picture of your environment.
You know, the thing about cloud growth is that it's sneaky. It's not some big, loud event. It's this quiet sprawl. New resources just appear. Roles get bigger, and permissions, they just stack up, one on top of the other, with nobody really keeping track. That quiet, steady pileup is where the trouble really starts brewing.
And this is what we mean by real visibility. We're not talking about just a long list of your stuff. We're talking about seeing the connections, the whole web. Who has access to what? Why? You get this incredible graphical view of how permissions are laid out across all your clouds, whether it's AWS or Azure, so you can finally see how it all actually works together.
Which, of course, leads to the big question. Okay, great, you can see everything now, so what? Just seeing the problem doesn't actually fix it, does it? It's just the first step.
And that's the perfect lead into Pillar 2, governance. Once you have that solid foundation of visibility, you can finally move from just observing what's there to actually defining and controlling what should be there.
I love this slide because it shows the transformation so perfectly. On the left, you've got what I call accidental permissions. This is the default in so many companies, right? Access just piles up with no rhyme or reason. But on the right, you have accountable permissions. Every single permission has a reason, it gets reviewed, and it gets taken away when it's not needed anymore. That's the world we want to live in.
So, how do you get there? With a structured workflow. It's pretty simple, really. People have to ask for access and explain why they need it. Then, the people who own those resources, the managers, have to regularly check in and say, yep, they still need this. It's not a one-and-done setup. It's a constant cycle that keeps everyone accountable.
But you know, good governance isn't just about a bunch of static rules. To really be effective, it has to be smart about risk. And that brings us to Pillar 3, activating risk intelligence. This is what makes your governance truly dynamic.
This seems so simple, but it's such a powerful idea. Think about it. Letting someone read a log file is one thing. Letting them delete your entire production database, that's a whole different level of risk.
And some permissions, they look harmless all by themselves. But what they're really doing is creating these little openings, this silent exposure that you just don't notice until it's way too late.
And here's where it gets really scary. When you start combining certain permissions, the danger doesn't just add up, it multiplies. It's exponential. And that's a huge blind spot for a lot of older governance models. They just don't see these toxic combinations.
And that is exactly why you need to be evaluating risk all the time. Cross-Identity bakes risk management right into the governance process. It's constantly scanning for things like dangerous role assignments, potential privilege escalation paths, or those super risky combinations of entitlements. So if a user's risk profile suddenly changes, their access can be reviewed automatically.
All right, let's talk about the final piece of this puzzle, Pillar 4. This is where we connect all that security and governance work directly to the bottom line. Permission-aware cost optimization. It's all about using what you know about access to make smarter spending decisions.
Just look at this chart. It shows you exactly how access and cost are tied together. When you give people way more permissions than they need, you end up with a ton of underutilized resources. When you have permissions that nobody's using, you end up paying for dormant services that are just sitting there, burning money. It's all connected.
The process here is really clear. First,
You use all that intelligence about permissions to find the waste. Then, you right-size the access. You trim it back to what people actually need to do their jobs. And what happens next is pretty awesome. Your cloud bill goes down because you stop paying for all that extra stuff. It's not just about cutting costs, it's about smart management.
So let's pull it all together. What's the big takeaway here? We're talking about the unified advantage. This is about moving away from that messy collection of disconnected tools and dashboards to one single structured framework that gives you real cloud control.
And here's why this is a game changer for everyone involved. Your security teams? They can finally reduce the company's exposure. The governance folks? They get to maintain actual control with workflows that make sense. Risk teams get proactive insights instead of always reacting. And the cloud and finance teams? They get to slash waste and understand what they're paying for. Everybody wins when these pillars are connected.
So let's wrap this up. The cloud is not getting any simpler. We all know that. Its complexity is just going to keep on growing. And in an environment like that, just being able to see what you have, that's not good enough anymore.
What you really need, what every organization needs, is continuous control. And that control has to cover everything: who has access, what the risk is, and how much it's all costing you. And that's precisely the gap cross-identity is built to close. It unifies that security-focused cloud governance with what we call intelligent FinOps, which is all about bringing financial accountability to the cloud. It brings them together in one single powerful motion. So at the end of the day, what's the outcome? You take that overwhelming complexity of the cloud and you turn it into manageable control. And you take those unpredictable costs and you turn them into solid confidence.
And it all comes back to these 4 pillars, working together. Visibility, so you can see what's really going on. Governance, so you can control it. Risk intelligence, so you can act on what matters most. And cost optimization, to make sure it's all adding value to the business. It's the complete package for mastering your cloud.